There's never a dull moment on Capitol Hill, so what should investors keep an eye on as March comes to an end? Let's bring in BTIG Managing Director and Director of Policy Research, Isaac Boltansky. Isaac, always good to see you here. Let's start on this billionaires tax making the rounds here. There's no chance this gets passed, right?
No. Let's go on to the next question. No, look, the White House budgets are definitionally aspirational, not actionable. Right. And look, they're important because they tell us what a administration is prioritizing, and they give us some clues about which way the different agencies are going to go on certain things. But absolutely not. There is no path to passage for that. And you don't need to take my word for it. Just listen to Senator Joe Manchin, who's already come out in opposition to some of the core tenets of the proposal.
So, Isaac, let's move on to something then that maybe is more realistic, right? When you're looking at the budget, what is the most realistic and the most important to investors? Like, what's the intersection? Is it the request for increase in national security budget, for example?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest takeaway from the past few months is that we're going to be spending more on our national defense, and that is going to be bigger and broader than just the typical physical lethal defense side, right? We're going to have more of an investment in cybersecurity in a number of these other areas where we do have some vulnerabilities, as shown by the past few months. And so, to me, the biggest takeaway is there is and there continues to be broad bipartisan support for more spending on the defense side, and I think that's the one thing out of this whole release from yesterday that we can say definitively for investors is going to happen.
Isaac, let me go back to that billionaires tax. So it doesn't get passed, but it does come at a time where President Biden, his approval ratings are the lowest of his presidency. What do you think specifically is causing that, and how could he turn things around?
Yeah, look, I think there are a number of things there. I think that the White House, if you talk to them, they will say that they did not make enough hay out of the initial reconciliation package that they passed. If you talk to Republicans, they say that the White House has no argument here. They let inflation run away, and they can also be attacked because of Afghanistan or even some of the response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Of course, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And we know that usually in the midterm year, the president's party gets shellacked, as former President Obama said. And I think that we're setting up for that again, Brian. There is no doubt in my mind that the House is going to flip, and it's going to flip by a pretty large margin. And so at a minimum, because of the House flipping, we're going to have divided government next year. And that's something I'm starting to tell investors they should prepare for.
And what does preparing for that look like, Isaac? Does that mean just full stop, Congress doesn't get anything done?
Yeah, look, I think that there aren't many themes, as you know, because we won't have that much legislation that can pass. I think your previous segment did a nice job of explaining where the big tech antitrust conversation is. I can tell you that both Democrats and Republicans want to pass something on antitrust. I do find it noteworthy, though, that we're not talking about breaking up big tech anymore, right? We're talking about pretty marginal things. So we'll still have to watch that. I think we'll watch the administrative state get more aggressive. To me, that's most acutely true for the CFPB, which oversees consumer finance. We had the head of the CFPB come out yesterday talking about a more aggressive enforcement stance. And then other things where we can say, hey, marijuana legalization will not happen. We know that that's not going to happen with divided government. So there's some ways to play that in the market as well.
Well, I want to pick up on that last point, right? Because the House is set to vote this week on a decriminalization bill for cannabis that they've considered before and passed before, and then it goes nowhere in the Senate. So what is likely? I mean, are we going to get a Safe Banking Act this year? Are we going to get any kind of legalization? Because as we've talked about here on the show before, there is definitely on this issue a divide between Congress and America, a bipartisan plurality of America on the weed issue.
Yeah, so here's how I think it's going to play out. The House is going to pass, as you said, the MORE Act, which would remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, set up a tax and regulatory regime. They're going to pass that again, which is a big deal in its own right, even though they've already done that before. But as often happens, and we've seen this before, that bill is going to die in the Senate. Here's the way that I think the rest of the year will play out. I think that we'll see the Senate attempt its own comprehensive cannabis reform bill. That's something being led by Senator Schumer. I think that that will be announced at some point in late April. I think we will see that effort also die because there isn't even agreement within the Democratic caucus, let alone getting the 60 votes you would need for full legalization. And once that dies, the logical legislative fallback is cannabis banking. And I am bullish on cannabis banking getting done this year because you have a few vehicles that it can be attached to, the annual defense bill or the China competitiveness bill. We know that lobbying is cumulative, and they were very close last year. And I think that you can wrap cannabis banking along with some of these restorative justice and research bills to make it more palpable to progressives. So I do think that we will get safe banking done this year, but that's going to be it for a period of time, given that we're then going into divided government.
Mm-hmm. Staying on highs, Isaac, and I ask this because we're about to talk to Frontier Airlines CEO shortly. He's trying to get that big Spirit merger deal done, but Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders are out here concerned, voicing their concern about higher airfare prices. What's the chatter? Do you think this deal gets squashed?
Look, I think that all big deals are going to face longer timelines, right? So my line on this is it's going to be tough to get this done by the end of the year, which I think is what they've said. I think they were shooting for a second half of this year close. That's going to be tough because every big deal is going to face additional scrutiny. And you saw that best evidence by the letter from the progressive lawmakers yesterday saying that they want more scrutiny here. You know, to me, the question is pretty straightforward. Are we going to have a traditional analysis of, route network overlap in line with the consumer welfare doctrine that's dominated the past 40 years of antitrust thinking? And if so, then this deal has a clear path to getting approved. If the Biden administration wants its rhetoric to bridge that divide and become reality, then they're going to have to try a more novel argument around consumer protection or the impact on labor and things that really haven't been proved through the courts. And so I think that you can still be optimistic about this type of deal given the overall impact on market share and route overlap. But my one cautionary statement is the Biden administration believes big is bad, which means every deal is going to take longer to get through the pipeline.
But not optimistic on a billionaire's tax. We'll leave it there. BTIG Director of Policy Research, Isaac Boltansky, always good to see you. We'll talk to you soon.